Hello, so as promised I'm going to be doing a video on whether or not you should do A-level chemistry. I know a lot of people are going into sixth form and college very soon, so I thought I'd give my thoughts on what you kind of need to do and how sort of skills that you might need for A-level chemistry, and then if I don't put you off too much with sort of my experience, some tips and advice and things that I wish I had done looking back. And this is all for the new spec. I was in the first lot to do the new spec A-level chemistry, and first let me just give you some information about me. So at GCSE I got an A star in chemistry. I did the triple, so I did all the sciences separate. So I got an A in C1, I got an A star in C2, and I got an A star in C3, and I remember I got 4 UMS in C3. And that leads me on to my first thing. If you haven't done triple science for chemistry, you will be so much more behind, and I can't say for physics, but for biology it's not quite as drastic. Whereas if you haven't done triple, to do A-level chemistry, all this content that should be quite easy will be new and it will be difficult. But I'll get into that a bit more. So then I did the Aas exam, which didn't count because I carried it on to A2, and I got an A. I didn't get a very high A. Again, I can't remember my exact marks. And then in A2, after I'd done everything, I got an A again overall. So I didn't get an A star, which I did want, but I wasn't very close to it either, so which is fine. And yes, I would definitely say chemistry is very, very hard. So the first thing I would say that is important is you need good math skills, and they say this for sciences, they say this for biology, and they say it for psychology, but the maths you need in biology and psychology is not really the same. Often you're taught methods and you need to be able to understand it, but you actually need to be able to do pretty good algebra work for chemistry. So for example, in AS chemistry, in our course I did AQA, the second topic was just calculations. It was percentage yield, it was empirical formula, it was concentration, volume, moles, calculations, all these things. And for me, I found that quite easy because I was quite good at maths. But for a lot of people who maybe either didn't do triple science or they weren't very good at maths, that would have been quite a difficult topic. And especially in A2, that sort of stuff is second nature, is easy marks, and things like you need to be able to plot and understand graphs and sort of like graphical relationships, so things like whether things are increasing, decreasing. You need to know a little bit about exponential functions in the new spec. I can't remember how much you need to know, but there is an equation using E and natural logarithms, but again, you don't need to know that much about it. You need to be good with indices, you need to be good with rearranging formula. That's really important because so often, so in A2 there was a topic called acids and bases, and often what would happen is you would have some information that you would then put in a formula and then to get something else, and then put in another formula to get something else, and it was like really layered. And you need to be comfortable with rearranging formula and also converting between units. Those are things that should be so second nature and easy, especially like I said in the acids and bases topic, any sort of topics to do with, mostly in physical, when you're finding masses and things like that, that should be it should be really easy, so you need to make sure that you're good at that. So chemistry is split into 3 sections at A level. You have physical, you have inorganic, and you have organic. So physical is like more, I sort of think more physics. So that's to do with atoms and bonding, usually like rates, so how rate of reaction, so how fast reactions go, definitely more calculations, masses. I'm trying to remember what topics did. Equilibrium, that's another big one, all things like that. So that's definitely more math heavy, and it's conceptually, I think, a bit more difficult to understand. It was my personal favourite, but I think that it can be more difficult to understand. Enthalpy, that's another massive thing that you do. Then inorganic is looking at things that don't have carbon in them. So organic means it has carbon in it. So inorganic was looking at metals. You looked at elements. So I can't remember in AS, I think it's quite small in AS, but in A2 there's a massive topic about transition metals and changing oxidation states and ligands and hexa aqua, all these, like, a topic I personally hated. And then organic, again, I wasn't that keen on organic, but organic is more like crude oil and then you go on from there. So you sort of start with like hydrocarbons, alkanes, and you develop onto carboxylic acids and esters and aldehydes and ketones and the reactions of all these things. And one big thing that is very different from GCSE that you learn about is mechanisms. And mechanisms is essentially, in a reaction, what atoms or what part of a molecule go where, what gets swapped out, what's the product, and all of that. And in AS I think you have 4 to learn, and in AT I don't know, you have like 10 to learn, and that's probably quite difficult because it's a lot of memorization, and exam questions, it won't be like draw this mechanism, it will give you some products or some reactants and you have to know which mechanism it is. So I think that's something that a lot of people find hard, but you can't really I don't think until you start chemistry, I don't think there's anything you can really do to help yourself in that situation. One thing I would definitely say is make sure your teachers are on Exam Pro. I know that's what it is for AQA, I'm sure there's something else for exam boards, but to give you exam questions. So I was under the impression there were no exam questions because it was a new spec, but there's a whole website that teachers have access to with all the questions from all the past papers that are relevant for our course. Like, it filters out all the ones that are old spec only, and my teacher actually gave them to us really late. So I would say make sure if your teacher is willing to either email them to you or to print them off for you at the end of each unit, so either before you do the unit test if you do that, or afterwards, so you have it. I don't know why we didn't get that, and teachers will be like, do past papers, but we don't have access to this stuff. I mean, we can go online and trawl through every single past paper and not know what's in what paper because we're not doing the old spec. But yeah, I don't know, that was quite annoying. If I'm looking down, it's because I've got my little notes here. One thing that I definitely found is, you know how when you start A-levels, teachers will be like, do extra reading, you need to read outside your course. I don't see how that would help you in chemistry at all. Like, I don't think that's really a necessity. I can't see how it can really help you in the exam. I mean, maybe I didn't get an A-star, so maybe some people would have done that, and maybe it will help some people's understanding, but personally, I wouldn't say that's really that important. So I just went to get my textbooks to show you my textbooks. So the school made us buy the AQA textbooks, and this is the A2 one. This is the AS one, and these are crap. These are the shittest books ever. They literally are wrong. Like, they have so much incorrect information in them. So let me just show you what they look like. So this is what the page would look like. It has all this information, and so much of it is unnecessary. Like, they're not even that thick, but so much is unnecessary in these books. One thing they do have is they do have exam questions in them. I never did them because, I don't know, I was stupid, maybe I was lazy. I just didn't think it was that beneficial to me to do these particular ones. I wanted to do the ones from, I don't know. I should have done them really, but also they don't have answers in them. That's why I didn't do them. You can get the answers on Caboodle, which is like a website that goes with these books, and you can get these books on the website. So I didn't do those questions because there were no answers to them in year 12, but I did do some of them in year 13. But anyway, these books are really crap. I barely used them. They had they didn't explain things well. They didn't have many examples. Had so much excess information about the history of chemistry that we didn't need to know. Like, maybe that's interesting, maybe some people want to read that, but I don't want to read about what everyone thought an atom was for like thousands of years. Like, do you know what I mean? If it's not going to come up, I don't want to know that. So I would say, if your course has it, get the CGP books because these are amazing, and not the revision guides, the actual textbooks. The revision guides just don't have quite enough information, or they have less examples. So especially as you can see, like, it's well loved. I've got things underlined in here. I love this book. This book saved me so much. Just realised that the camera why am I saying the camera? My phone just shut off. But basically this book has practical information in it, whereas this book does not. So, I mean, your school might make you get this book, but I would say, I don't know, just get this one. It's amazing, and it has, so if you ever miss a practical, it has all the practicals you need to know, required practicals, and also practicals that you should know still. So for example, I don't think titration, like regular titration, not redox titration, is actually one that we need to know, but you do have to know it, because like, it's not a required practical in the sense that they might not ask you how do you do a titration, but you do need to know it because you need to know how to do calculations, you need to understand it, and it still has it in here. It basically has everything. It also has information on some definitions. Let me see what they have. Oh yeah, so like how different ways to measure the pH, and different ways to heat things, and the pros and cons and the safety things, which is all useful for paper 3. So if you do ever like miss a practical, or you can't remember it because you do them early in the year, this is great. I'm going to talk about the practicals now, actually, because all my teachers for biology and chemistry said to us, oh, you need to revise the practicals, and okay, you do need to know the methods, but that wasn't helpful to us in any way, and what we really needed was to know how the practicals relate to the concepts, and I don't think that, personally, we were really taught that. So I think in my paper 3 exam, which is the one I did the worst on, they asked us something that was like, how you've got these products and you need to find the enthalpy of neutralization or something like that, and I was like, well, what? What? Like, I thought they would be like, plan a redox titration, or plan a calorimetry experiment, and I just don't think the teachers had a clue. I know it was a new spec, but I don't think they really knew that. So the papers are broken down into 3 ways. So you have paper 1, which is physical and inorganic, paper 2, which is physical and organic, but there's some, I think kinetics is only in paper 2 and not in paper 1, and like, for example, paper 2 won't have much physical. It will just, it's mostly organic. Like, in my head it was like physical and inorganic and organic, even though there is physical in paper 2, but it's not as much. It's more related with organic. And then paper 3 is supposedly everything, and it's practical questions. I mean, there's practical questions in all of them, but mostly practical questions and multiple choice questions, which saved me. If that hadn't have been a thing, I would have lost so many more marks. The multiple choice questions are quite difficult, and in chemistry, there's lots of anomalies and things that are like exceptions and things like that, and multiple choice really test that, and it tests, are you converting, are your units correct, all these sort of things, like mathematical skills. So you have to be quite really precise and know what's different and what's unique. So can this not have hydrogen bonding, and does this one go up in the trend, and all of that. You really need to know that, because I feel like multiple choice really tests that. I think a lot of people find with chemistry that initially there's a real drop of the grade. I didn't do really any essay-based subjects, so I don't want to make assumptions, but from what I saw, often people who did English and history and sociology and psychology maintained their grades from GCSE, or even did better than they got at GCSE, which is great. I'm not trying to say that they don't deserve it, but with sciences and maths, people barely could maintain what they've got at GCSE. People were getting A's and then got E's in AS. Like, I don't know, I think it's definitely a challenge. I think with chemistry, a lot of people do drop out, and I think the mistake a lot of people make is they pick it as sort of like a side subject. Like, they pick their 3 subjects and they're like, oh, I've got a 4th one. I know obviously most people don't do 4 anymore, but they had a 4th one and they were like, okay, I'm just gonna pick it. And often people say things like empty statements, that, oh, I find it interesting, But I think really you need to, chemistry is likely to be one that really like, see, I want to be like it's going to be your main subject, but if you did subjects like mine, it might not be, because maths takes up a lot of time, biology took up a lot of my time. But yeah, basically don't think you can just pick it on the side and it's not going to take up a lot of your time, because it will. There is quite a lot of content, and also because there's a lot of math skills and sort of question skills, you're going to spend a lot of time practicing how to answer certain questions. So a lot of physical, there isn't as much content to know compared to like organic, but you're going to have to practice the questions a lot, and also you will for organic as well, because I think all A-level sciences are just so difficult, and like I said, I've never done physics, but I assume that it's the same. I also found that unit tests are really not for you to go and get good grades. So I wasn't doing well in any of my unit tests. I've got a spreadsheet still, I've thrown them all away now, but I've got a spreadsheet still on my laptop, and I think I had 1A in year 12 and 1A in year 13. So in all the tests on like 30 sections, I only got an A in 2 of them, and I never had an A star. And I had E's, I think I had 1 U, I had a lot of D's, I think probably E's and D's probably my most common. And it just, you can't look at them as, oh, I'm not getting the grades, so that's what it's all for. It's just, that's not the point. The point of the unit test, or sort of like the summary test you do at the end of like topics during the year, is really for you to learn that what you're writing isn't good enough. And the chemistry written answers are often very, very precise, and you have to write the exact things, because even if you think what you're writing is correct, it might not actually answer the question, and it might not actually be specific enough. So you definitely have to, that's what the unit tests are for, to really practice it. So I'd say don't worry if you're not doing well in your unit test, because I never did in any of my subjects ever have work that like sort of represented how I did in the end. But I really try to use it as a learning experience. So when you come to revise near your exams, look at your unit tests, look at the questions. Hopefully your teachers would have picked questions that are quite a good mix of difficult, easy, things that usually come up, things that are a bit different, so you can really look. One thing as well that I would say, I know I've said that like 5 times now, in the new spec they have these levelled questions that I hated and I really struggled to like get a grasp of, but they're almost like essays. I mean, they're not essays, but it's like you have to have, it will be like a process or a very long answer or explanation, and you have to basically include everything and have it all very detailed. And I would either miss a step of my explanation, or I would cover each step but they wouldn't be detailed enough, and you just can't access the high bands because of it. And I think make sure that your teachers teach you that almost straight away and how to answer them, because I struggled with them so much. And often there'll be calculation questions where it's steps. So in chemistry, often one of the first things you have to do in a calculation is find the moles or find the mass or something like that, find the concentration or the volume, and you always, from whatever information you have to do the first step, calculate the moles if you can, or calculate the mass or something like that, because it will probably help you. So I know I've been a bit all over the place in this video, but it's all coming back to me as I talk. So all in all, I'd say chemistry is very, very difficult, and like I said, I got an A star at GCSE, and I managed somehow to get an A at A level, and it took so much hard work, so much time, just hours and hours of trying to memorize things, of doing so many questions. And I think really, really make sure you know that it's going to be so difficult to go into it. But that being said, I enjoyed so much of it. I enjoyed it so much more than I thought. I don't know why I picked my A-levels, to be honest, because I didn't really enjoy most of the subjects that I picked like beforehand. But I think it's really important to evaluate how your GCSE understanding. So for example, in C1, very little of that is of any use in A-level. It's very basic. In C2 you use a lot of it, but any C2 stuff that comes up like bonding is if you know it, it will be so easy, and you'll be grateful when there's a question about ionic bonding, because that should be very, very easy. If you do struggle with C2, I would say just give it a miss, because chemistry in itself will be a struggle. If you're not good with empirical formula and those kind of things, and bonding and rates of reaction, I would say just leave it, because I don't know, I think it's, I mean, obviously if you really want to do it, and maybe there's a reason that you struggled with it or whatever, but I didn't have great teachers at GCSE, I had to teach myself everything pretty much, but I think really have a think, how passionate am I? Because if you're not passionate about it, or you're not interested in it, and you also found it difficult, it's going to be so hard to do well, I think, because a lot of the information isn't inherently that interesting. So at least if you're able to do it, you might like it a bit more, if that makes sense. And also I would say if you're C3, even if you don't do that well, just having that knowledge will definitely help you. I think pretty much all of C3 is useful in A-level chemistry. I can't remember everything, but the majority of it, I remember thinking, wow, a lot of this is C3. Or if you didn't do C3 because your school doesn't do triple, or you didn't get onto triple or whatever, try to learn that. Okay, so I hope this video wasn't too confusing. If you have any questions, then please leave them in the comments. I think the fact that I've been so sporadic and sort of all over the place goes to show how I feel about chemistry and how I found it in general. I know Unjaded Jade has done a video, so I'll link that below, and I agreed with pretty much everything that she said. I just wanted to give maybe more of a full-on A2 perspective, because you can't drop these subjects anymore, so you have to do the full thing, and yeah. I think chemistry goes really well with both physics and biology. In Chemistry A2 there's a nice section of biochemistry, which is really good if you're doing biology, and it's helpful and interesting, and I think a lot of people really like that section. I think there's quite a bit that's to do with physics as well. I think in physics there's a section on gases or something. I don't know. If anyone did physics and chemistry, then let me know, but I think there's definitely some crossover. Again, if you're doing maths, chemistry will go well. You'll probably find the maths of chemistry quite straightforward if you're doing maths. Not to say that you have to do it. I'm sure loads of people have done chemistry and didn't do maths and found it fine. But it will definitely make it easier. And yeah, I mean, other than that, people who do chemistry with like random subjects, I think often they end up finding it quite difficult, because you're not so centred. Like, for example, the biology and chemistry papers, well, we had the same exam board. There were many differences, but at least it was still like science, whereas I imagine doing chemistry with like random subjects must be quite difficult, but I don't know, again, I haven't done that. So yes, and if you want to know more about my results, that was my first video, so I'll link that down below. And yeah, I hope this made sense and you can understand. The key message was get the CGP book if you're doing chemistry. Get this book. This book will help you so much. So that's it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.